Hello, angelrin89 here.
And angelrin89.
And we're going to talk about The Force Awakens and our thoughts and feelings on it. This is kind of complicated. And we decided that this is what we were going to do to round out the whole Star Wars month of videos. This topic was submitted by Tumblr and anon, and their topic is your initial thoughts on The Force Awakens versus now. How did you and Angelrin both come to change your minds? Why did it anger you both so? What did it do wrong? How would you guys rewrite it?
So he's probably going to add an annotation here of our initial thoughts.
Well, yeah, I mean, we did. Actually, we both saw The Force Awakens in theaters together.
It was supposed to be because I was so excited. I even have a reaction video back when I still did a lot of videos on my YouTube channel. He'll probably put a link below to it of my initial reaction to the trailer. Like, I geeked out. And I was also especially hyped because it came out December 18th, my birthday. And that whole year, I was like binging so much Star Wars. I kept rewatching.
You and I rewatched episodes 1 through 6
constantly,
a couple of times.
And I rewatched the Clone Wars 3 times in a row that year. Like, and I kept reading all the comics that were immediately starting to come out. Like,
the hype was real.
I was just gorging on Star Wars. Well, I consumed it and then I became Star Wars. Well, I am now more powerful than you could ever imagine.
And I was not nearly as excited because I remember you and I talked a lot about this. I was excited, but I was kind of a little cautious, optimistic.
But I like lived and breathed Star Wars, so I'm like, it was destiny that this movie would come out on my birthday. Granted, all the tickets were sold out on December 18th, but I got it for the 21st and I made sure to get that day off because of, even though I technically didn't hang out with my friends tonight, that night, like, I made sure I got the whole day off because then I was going to marathon the 6 movies that day in preparation to go see the movie with all my friends.
So yeah.
And then we did the video because we wanted to do a video because we
were so like, we had so many like, we wanted to do our impressions of it right after the movie came out.
Because a lot of people do that, their very first impression when they first came out. And I think that is a good thing to do, and we've been talking for a long time, like off camera, that we needed to do a follow-up video, because then our feelings started to change.
It's been over 2 years since we made that video. Oh gosh, it's been over 2 years since The Force Awakens. But it's like, we made that video, and I posted that as soon as I could, you know, right after we made it, so it was a day or so by the time it uploaded to YouTube. So we watched.
It's an hour-long spoiler video.
It's an hour long, and I'll put a link to that.
And so if you want to see our first impressions, just know you might need to block a couple of time. I'm sure you need to block
a full hour of time
because I'm sure this video might be long too. But yeah, it's a long video. But we had, and it's we did a whole like spoiler video, like nothing but spoilers, and we just had so much going on in our thoughts, and we were just prattling on.
Well, and it's so funny thinking about how we're so critical of the movie now. Looking back at it, we were in denial. Like
you poor sweet summer children.
Well, and people know that especially if you watch a lot of my videos, I'm very critical about writing, and I can see myself struggling to try to come up with reasons why.
Because it's Star Wars, though. Like, even I said in the video, I prided myself on being an open-minded Star Wars fan.
Both like the prequels, so we're not just hating this just because, you know, for some mindless reason.
And I did criticize people who were immediately like, Star Wars is ruined forever the moment it was announced that Disney bought out Star Wars and was going to make movies. Because I thought, no, stop being hyper-public.
Even I was like, let's give them a chance to see what they do. If it's bad, then it's bad. If it's good, then it's good.
Like, you don't know what they're going to do. Like, you can't just say, just from the announcement. I mean, yes, if it said that M. Night Shyamalan was directing, then yes, hold on to your butts, prepare for the worst. But no, it was just Disney bought Star Wars, and I'm like, it had potential, because Disney is a good company. It's just...
It was a good company.
No, it still is. Thankfully, it kept most of its paws out of Star Wars, because of it's just merchandise is where Disney is obviously whoring out Star Wars. Lucasfilm has most of the control. And I wish I knew that in hindsight too, because modern Lucasfilm really sucks.
I wish I knew all the stuff about Kathleen Kennedy before, because it's funny.
I would have tempered my expectations.
Well, and it's like, and you know, like we knew that George Lucas had passed on Lucasfilm, but we didn't know the details because no one had ever really heard of Kathleen Kennedy before.
Nobody really looked into this stuff. Nobody cared about this stuff. Now people actually will because of its more of the talk.
Yeah. Well, and Kathleen Kennedy is obviously a heavy influence because since she's in control, she's the one picking these directors, firing these directors, forcing.
Constantly, she like fires these directors as much as you put breath mints in your mouth whenever you have a really like bad breath that day.
Yeah, I mean, you know, and it's usually for the most ridiculous of reasons. Like with Colin Trevorrow, he had plans for Luke. Well, Luke's going to die. Well, I don't want him to die. Well, you're fired. Oh, we're just going to replace him with JJ because he did such a great job with The Force Awakens, right?
Yeah, but speaking on our initial thoughts then versus now, and if you want to watch the previous video, it should be fun to watch, especially with all his videos that he's done talking about The Force Awakens. That's a really funny compare and contrast. But it was a gradual thing for me. For him, it was a little bit faster than it was for me. It took me significantly
It
longer.
took me a few weeks to about a month before I was actually fully critical.
It took me full on 5 months for me to fully admit 100% that The Force Awakens is absolute garbage. Like, I was slowly like, yeah, that, because he would bring up something, and I'm like, yeah, and I see other videos that would bring up something, I'm like, yeah, that's actually a good point.
And it's like, in the video, in our reaction video, I stated that it was fun seeing Rey use the Force, which it was, isolated. Those scenes.
At face value, it is very cool and flashy.
Seeing her use the Jedi mind trick on the stormtrooper and having him just drop his weapon and walk out like a
Especially when you find out that was
Daniel Craig.
Daniel Craig, and then his stormtrooper name was like something 007, which
Yeah.
I'm just like, ah.
Well, and but when I started thinking about it, I was thinking, I didn't want to admit that Rey was a Mary Sue at first.
But that's the problem though.
Right.
At face value, it's great, but when you use this thing called your brain, suddenly.
Well, and it's like, and I went into the movie loving Rey, all the potential, her being Rey Skywalker. You and I were saying that from the beginning. The second we saw a picture of Rey, we're like, Rey Skywalker.
Well, and there was even that one trailer that was talking about like how she wanted to find her family, and everything about her entire, just from her character design alone, drew obvious heavily callbacks to Anakin and to Luke from A New Hope. Like,
their outfits that they wore on Tatooine.
Like, it was obvious, it was a direct callback to that. So I'm just like, okay, there's that, and there's this heavy influence of her wanting to find her family, and like, she wants to know. And then there was that one trailer, the trailer that I geeked out the most. I think it was the first trailer where you had Luke's line from Return of the Jedi.
I have it.
My father has it. My sister has it. You have that power too. Like, it was splicing his line, but it made it seem almost like Luke was talking to Rey.
Yeah.
And so it made me think, like, oh gosh, is she a Skywalker? Like, is this Luke's daughter?
Well,
and I'm like, that's cool.
And that's really a lot of what The Force Awakens was implying. But you have all this excitement and all the story of all the pre-release information that they were releasing about the characters. I was like, and
the Luke's theme was her theme.
Yeah, and I was super excited about Rey, and it took me a while, but I just had to admit that, and I would say, I actually used to say this right after the movie came out, that Rey has faults in her writing, but she's not a Mary Sue. I was wrong. I was very wrong to say that. She is a Mary Sue.
She is a Mary Sue.
And it's only when you actually start thinking about it that it really gets worse. And that was when I started thinking about it, and that's when I started bringing up these things to you, like, wait, maybe she is a Mary Sue, and you're like, no, I mean, well, kinda, and then...
And I was like, well, but there's still this, there's that, and then...
Because one of the things we did say in our video that we stuck by for a little while was, well, maybe episode 8 will help with this. Ugh. Hindsight is...
Hindsight!
But it's like, because one of the things that, I think I said this in a video...
I wish I could go back in time, just like, you absolute fool!
I want to
you
slap
buffoon!
I think I said in our reaction video that, if it's explained that she was Luke's daughter and that she had some prior training, then everything would be solved.
Well, I even would accept it even though I wasn't a fan of it, like the whole Rey Solo theory. And I'm like, again, then it would mean that she was trained by Luke and then just something happened to make her lose her memory. Fine, that would even explain that Rey Skywalker, Rey Solo, that would also explain how for some reason she understands Chewbacca.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that whatever. Let's not explain that, sure. And I was like, but it would give an explanation, but...
But then I remember I hit a point when I was trying to argue against her being a Mary Sue, and I just hit a point where I said, no, it doesn't matter if there's an explanation for it, because it was the realization
the burden of the proof lies on The Force Awakens.
Well, and I realized, though, that even if she did have training, she would have been at the level of a youngling. She would have been... What, she 5 years old or something?
Yeah.
She would have been like those kids that Yoda was teaching the basic lightsaber stuff. So even if she did have that training, she wouldn't be able to have the mind trick abilities or the Jedi skills that she displays in the movie. And no matter if you do come up with an explanation for it, pulling this out of nowhere is still her being a Mary Sue. And it was that moment that I realized.
Even if you say, well, episode 8 will explain things, that's not a good thing to say.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter because this stuff should be explained in that movie.
Example, A New Hope didn't need Empire Strikes Back and everything like else. If Star Wars cut off from then and there was never anything that came after that, it still is a satisfying movie because it has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And then it has a proper conclusion. It sets up things, but it's still pretty darn self-contained, and it explains a lot of stuff that doesn't require other movies to explain. In fact, there wasn't any mystery boxes, like the whole big bombshell of Vader being Luke's father wasn't even a mystery box. That was just...
That was introduced at the end of
Empire Strikes Back. It took your expectation and turned it on its head.
That was a real subversion.
That's an actual subversion. Like, go eat dirt, Rian Johnson.
And everything about, I've talked about this before, and it's more annoying the more you think about it. With J.J. Abrams and his mystery box style of writing, it's literally just dangling keys in front of someone and says, is this interesting?
We actually said something like that in our little initial video where it was just like how there was these really cool things and it was like the directors were like dangling dog treats in front of us and they wouldn't give us the dang dog treat and then the movie ends. And they're just like, give me the dang dog treat. Yeah,
and it's like they tease us with all these things and it's like, okay, maybe the other movies will do it. But since we know that they have, now we know that they never had any plan. They never had any real plan, and even the stuff that JJ had come up with was thrown out by Rian Johnson because there's no control over the trilogy. Which
proves why JJ should have never done his stupid little mystery box thing anyway, because if you can't expect some other director with some other vision to answer your questions you set up.
Well, and especially if, he doesn't have any actual control to actually make this happen. It's like you should have just established, because the hints that Rey is Luke's daughter are so strong.
Or tied to the Skywalkers.
Or tied directly to the Skywalkers are so strong, especially when she has a vision of Bespin in a hallway that you only see during the Vader and Luke fight.
I mean, as stupid as the line was that the lightsaber calls to you, because I'm sorry they don't work like the ones in Harry Potter, but still, the fact that Anakin's lightsaber called to her, even in the context of that movie, is supposed to tell you, yeah, she has a connection to the Skywalkers.
There's something important about her. But then just establishing her to nobody.
Even in the novelization of The Force Awakens, I believe it was, Kylo Ren even's just like, it's you. Like, he knew her.
Yeah. Well, and even when, in the movie, when there was like, it's that girl.
The girl.
Well, the girl. And it's like, okay, he's making it sound like...
There's something important about Rey. Like, she's supposed to be tied to something important.
And the novelization makes that even more blatant and more obvious. There's something important about Rey.
Granted, the burden of that not meeting expectations is the fault of The Last Jedi, but still, the fact that they so blatantly kept dangling these mystery boxes is just so obnoxious.
Well, and, it's one of those things where I actually remember have had some people tell me this, that... Oh, well, the original movie didn't explain everything. Like, okay, no, but A New Hope explained what it needed to. Obi-Wan gave you a bit of a brief history.
It was pretty self-contained.
Yeah, and Obi-Wan would tell Luke about the Jedi and the lightsabers and the Force, and then there's the Empire and they're bad, and it's like, okay, you know everything you need to know. And as the first movie in a trilogy, establishing these basic world-building facts.
Even then, George Lucas didn't know if this movie was going to fail or succeed. A lot of people were banking on A New Hope, the first Star Wars movies, just failing. If it wasn't for Steven Spielberg, 20th Century Fox wouldn't even ever given it the greenlit. Because if he's just like, Steven Spielberg was the only one like, no, this could be something big. But even then, so everybody was banking on that movie failing. So George Lucas made sure to make a movie that could at least stand alone on its own. It didn't need other movies to explain anything. Other movies just made A New Hope better in hindsight, mind you, but A New Hope, if you watch only A New Hope, it stands fine on its own. It doesn't need a sequel to
wrap it up,
to just do anything,
because it ends on the celebration of having destroyed the Death Star. Okay, all right. And then Empire Strikes Back comes in, and it's like, okay, no, there is a bigger story going on here, and then you have that in Return of the Jedi,
and then they build from then on. But then From A New Hope, it can work fine on its own. It doesn't need other movies to make it better. to say we were in such denial that we were like thinking that other movies were needed to make The Force Awakens better. It's no. Past me, no. No, that's no.
And we obviously didn't like the movie, but I know something we said numerous times in our introduction, in our video, was we didn't know how to feel. And then it was...
That's probably the biggest indicator of subconscious denial.
We didn't like it, but we didn't really want to say... We didn't want to say that we got hyped up for a new Star Wars movie and then came out of it saying, that was sucks.
Like, we didn't want to be those people.
No.
Who wants to be those people? Those are the haters, and who wants to be a hater? Well, now I'm like, yeah, I'm a hater.
I hate this movie. But it's like... And you know, it's funny because I can see us in our video. We bring up issues like Han Solo being killed off. That one we definitely were pissed off at.
Oh, that one was... oh, gosh. I still remember.
I still remember because I was sitting by you when we watched it, and she freaked out. She had a near panic attack.
I dropped my popcorn, and I felt almost like I was being stabbed. Like, the whole scene, I felt dread coming because you knew the moment Han walked on it, like everyone had that nagging feeling that, he's gonna die. He's gonna die, isn't he? And and the whole time, in my brain, I was like, don't you dare movie, don't you dare movie, don't you dare movie.
And I was thinking, this is exactly what they're setting up, but they wouldn't really kill off Han Solo.
One of the most popular all-time characters.
Well, and it's like, especially after they establish, oh, this is his son, Ben Solo.
Well, and they made a big deal about Han returning.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of the trailers, Han is prevalent in all of them.
Well, and you remember the first scene that they showed of Han was him going onto the Falcon and go, Chewie, we're home.
Well, yeah, that was their big moneymaker shot. They knew that would get people who are watching the trailer freaking out, because every reaction video, that's the one people usually freak out the most. I freaked out the most in my reaction. As soon as I saw Han and Chewie, I was geeking out, making pterodactyl noises.
Well, and you know, that was just the manipulative nostalgia that they crammed The Force Awakens.
Oh yeah, that's what makes Star Wars good. Look, things you like X-Wings, like TIE Fighters, like Star Destroyers, and Stormtroopers, and the original trilogy characters.
We're Star Wars guys.
And practical effects, because that's what makes a movie, the effects. It's a tool. It's a tool. Like you, J.J. Abrams.
Jar Jar Abrams.
Right, sorry, Jar Jar Abrams. Man, did people call that? They said if you ruin this, you will be known as Jar Jar Abrams forevermore. And I thought, I was like, haha, funny.
That's a funny joke.
Funny joke, but I didn't take it seriously. And now I'm like, crap, they called it.
Yeah.
But yeah, oh yeah, one of the other things that we said in the video is like how annoyed we were with the whole concept of Ben Solo, and how like, oh great, and Jason Solo XB, like wonderful, because that was such a wonderful character. And then we were like, but at least he's not as bad as Jason. And I'm just like, oh, honey, no, he's far worse than Jason Solo.
And this is the problem, is that we liked the concept of Kylo Ren, and you and I theorized a lot before the movie came out of who exactly Kylo Ren is, and the idea that he's some sort of like a wannabe Sith who was like worships like Sith.
Like he wasn't even tied to a main character. We were thinking like of a brand new character, because that that's so much more interesting to me than, oh, let's have him tied to like Han Solo.
Yeah, and
let's go with the Jason Solo thing, because we're so original. We're ripping off the EU. That's why we decanonized it.
We're ripping off one of the most unlikable characters in the series, in the EU.
If the EU is no longer canon, then why are you taking ideas from it?
And especially if you go out of your way to establish a new EU that became a mess, less than a year or two?
Oh, it did not take long. The EU, at least, it took a long time. It took like at least a decade for the EU to become absolute monster garbage. And that's why I wasn't a fan of the EU. I will admit, the EU's got some good stuff, especially early on, and especially anything written by Timothy Zahn. I have nothing but respect for that man. But it took the EU a while to become hot garbage. This took literally from the moment The Force Awakens happened, everything just hot garbage.
Well, and even though they had some neat comics, even then the good ones still...
Yeah, the good comics all started going to crap, and I'm just like, dang, now I can't even buy the comics anymore, because then I was like, you know what, fine, other than Rogue One, I'm writing off all the movies, I'll just read the comics now, because at least the comics were good, and then the comics started to suck.
Yeah, and...
It's like, I can't have any nice things. Well, it was like, but then I was like, well, okay, at least I have Rebels, and then Rebels started to suck.
Well, and one of the things that really annoys me is that I think I talked about this a lot. Is when Disney bought it, they straight up said that the old EU has no bearing on anything that they're doing, and then like, and I was like,
except when it does.
Except when it does. But when they said that, I was like, okay, cool. And then they're like, we're going to start a new EU.
Well,
we're going to keep everything in line.
And that's easier though for new fans to jump in because the EU has so many books, and imagine like any new fan trying to jump in.
You have decades, even spanning back to the late 70s and early 80s of all these books.
Like that's just like way too much archive binge, and that's way too much money. Though granted, we know the real reason it's because Disney can't make money off of those books.
Yeah.
But still, that's like absolute insanity to expect new fans to come in and read all this crap. I'm like, no, start from scratch, create a whole new thing. And it was a good thing to say, no, this is all an alternate continuity. So whenever people say the EU is not canon, no, it's an alternate continuity. I may not like the EU, but I'm sorry, it still technically is canon in its own universe.
It exists as legends, which I was okay. I was okay with this. They're going to start off their own EU with their own stories. It's all going to be in line with the movies. They're going to make sure they keep this straight. They started the storytelling group.
And they can't even keep it straight.
Well, and it's found out that the storytelling group only exists to basically publish books. Like, they don't actually care about canon details. Like, you can have anything happen and they wouldn't stop it.
Well, I mean, we see this from The Force Awakens to The Last Jedi. They can't even keep their movies within continuity with each other because Rian Johnson's did so many things that contradicted what's in The Force Awakens. Never mind that movie contradicts everything in Star Wars before it. It can't even keep its sequels connected.
Like, if all the sequels were in line stupid, but they were consistently stupid in their own way, then that would be more understandable. But you can tell that they're all at war with each other. And I said this is the exact same problem that tore the old EU up, where you had all these authors who all had different ideas.
Too many cooks in the kitchen.
Yeah, and then you had people like Karen Travis.
Gosh, that hack.
Who is basically like Rian Johnson, she's just like, well, I don't like what you're doing. I'm going to do something to spite you.
And she insults the fans. Like, she called any of her haters the Talifans, like referring to them as bad as, like, the terrorists, the Taliban. Like, okay, you're obviously a very secure person if you equate people who criticize your books to terrorists.
Yeah, and it's like, and you have all these people who have different ideas. And I remember I saw an interview with, like, at a con with Timothy Zahn, and it was another writer, and they were talking about that same issue where all these writers who would come in and they would have very little oversight, and they could just do whatever, and Timothy Zahn would have to come in with his own books and fix some of these problems. Like, there was this one, I think it was called The Force Walk, where you could, like, see into the past or like go into the past and interfere, and he was like, he's sitting there desperately trying to fix these, like, no, you can't do this, but since there was no oversight, there was no someone above going, no.
Which is why I liked the Clone Wars cartoon, because it was just George Lucas and a bunch of writers. There was many cooks in the kitchens, but George Lucas oversaw it all with his little Padawan apprentice Dave Filoni as the director. They oversaw it all.
Yeah, and that was the first 4 seasons that he was directly...
Yeah, where he was directly, because granted he was involved in other projects in season 5 and 6, but even season 5 and 6, while they weren't as good as
they had good episodes.
They had good ideas even in some bad episodes, like far better than anything that Disney has ever done.
Well, because I remember, like, I have a lot of issues with season 5, but it's mainly because they had to stretch out so many different ideas, and it's like
they were stretching them too thin.
Well, it's like, I think the worst offender was that one episode with all the droids. And it was like, a first episode was solid and I really liked it, and then the next 4 episodes
it just kept dragging.
It kept dragging.
And I was like, but even with the weaker seasons, it still had a lot of good concepts, good ideas, and even good moments. Like, even in episodes I didn't like, I had moments where I'm like, that was cool. That was cool.
Well, and and they had good ideas, and it felt like they just needed someone to tweak a lot of this stuff to make it work. Like the ending, like the finale, that Barriss was evil, and it's like... Well,
and then whenever I found out the real concept is, they always wanted to do a Fugitive episode, and honestly, I do like the idea that that's the reason why Ahsoka left.
I'm a big fan of the movie The Fugitive, and I was just sitting there, I'm like, yes!
Well, I do even like that that's the reason why Ahsoka left, that she felt jaded and she felt like she didn't belong, and not killing her off, having her leave of her own volition to try to find her own place in the universe. That's a good idea. The problem was making Barriss evil, and the real reason is they realized, oh crap, we've never had another character up until this point that actually was a Jedi that befriended Ahsoka other than Barriss Ophi, so then the problem is...
But Barriss had only appeared in a handful of episodes over the course of 5 seasons.
So the problem is it's like, well, crap. this doesn't work with the whole traitor thing with the fugitive.
The traitor's best friend. But what I've said is that I thought that Varys was being controlled by the mind control worms that they established in a previous episode of the Clone Wars.
It's like, but that's our rewrite of
Oh yeah.
But anyways, back to the Force
Well,
Awakens.
yeah. But we're just bringing up similar issues that a lot of the.
No, but everything that did was still way better. And why? Because they had a figurehead that helped oversee everything and make sure pretty much most everything was in line. So whenever George Lucas was out of the kitchen, sometimes things were a mess, and Dave Filoni did his best.
But you could tell that there was a lack of direction in a lot of parts.
But Dave Filoni, I still think, is a talented director, because I think the only redeemable things of Rebels goes straight back to Dave Filoni, because everything else that's not good is obviously the fault of modern Lucasfilm and Kathleen Kennedy.
Well, yeah, I mean, especially when they forced him to kill off all of the Inquisitors, and it's like, you just established these really cool Inquisitors.
Oh, but apparently they're totally
We need to bring in Darth Maul!
Oh, but that's not a character we created. Let's kill him off. Then what was the point of bringing him back?
They bring him back again for freaking Solo.
Oh, because he's a popular character, but
They're just this is frustrating. It's
you
mindless.
don't know how to market. You don't know how to market Lucasfilm.
This is mindless fan service, which is what The Force Awakens was, which is why it's like. And I remember. I realized that there was some mindless fan service in it that didn't make much sense. But there were some good fan service moments, like when they see the Millennium Falcon, and then Finn's like, "What about that ship?" And she's like, "That's a piece of garbage." And then,
she's like, "That one's garbage," and then the other shit loads up. She's like, "The garbage will do."
And then they run towards the Millennium Falcon. I remember the theater erupted when we saw the Millennium Falcon, and it's like, yeah, that's an exciting moment, which I actually think was still a solid scene.
I would still keep it in my rewrite.
Yeah, if I, same here.
Because it's funny. It's a funny line, and it calls back to like Luke and Leia both referring to like the Millennium Falcon
as a
piece. Well, Luke says a piece of junk, and Leia said, "You're gonna fly in that? You're braver than I thought." And I think even Lando like looks at his ship and he's like, "What did you do to her?"
Yeah, and but you have some great moments like that, and then I did see some people do compilations of all of the scenes that they copied from.
Yeah, that's the biggest problem. It was a complete and total, utter lazy ripoff of A New Hope.
And it's not just, and someone pointed, I don't remember which of the videos that I watched pointed this out, but it's not just they copied some basic plot points. There are some.
Because the Phantom Menace lists a couple of like nods from A New Hope, but that was to pay homage. It was to remind you that, as Lucas put it, these movies are supposed to rhyme. They parallel each other, but it's not copying. Because the Phantom Menace has its own plot. It's got its own story. It didn't borrow a story element. It borrowed imagery.
Yeah, but everything with The Force Awakens, it's like there's so much. They borrow major plot points. They borrow straight up cinematography of the original trilogy, and a lot of people are like, when you see this side by side, it becomes so it's insulting that
he just played it safe. He didn't want to try anything new. He didn't want to venture out. Disney and Lucasfilm, they didn't want to venture out and try something new. And even people who were staunch haters of the prequels for years even have come out and turned around and said, even though if they don't like the prequels, they've still said, you know what, at least George Lucas tried something different.
He tried to do something original, and even though it didn't land with everyone, you can still look at that and say, we got new worlds, we got new characters, we got new ships and new planets and stuff.
World building, ideas. You got to learn more about the Republic.
Well, and even
more Sith characters.
Yes. Well, and shoot, Darth Maul and
Darth Maul's cool, but
Count Dooku.
Oh yeah, like freaking Christopher Lee. Like you cannot tell me that you had any problems with him because it's freaking Christopher Lee
playing a Sith. And it's like,
and Grievous had a really cool design, and all the show got new ships, completely new ships, new technology like that you could see instead of all the same old repainted TIE fighters and repainted X-wings. Oh, let's just take an old toy and repaint it. Let's just paint C-3PO's arm red. Yeah, that'll be a new toy that'll set it apart from all the others. Or you can make something new. The only new thing that was genuinely awesome was like BB-8.
Yeah, and I think I still say that the best part of the movie was BB-8. He's a genuinely new character.
New design.
He's actually fun to watch.
Well, and it harkens back to an old idea because George Lucas originally, one of his concepts for R2-D2 was the design for BB-8, but they'd never had the technology to create something like that. We now have the technology to create something like that.
Yeah.
So it's cool. It's bringing to life an old idea But as opposed to say lazy, let's take an old concept and slap it onto something like, oh, Star Killer Base, because originally that was Luke's name. He was going to be Luke Star Killer, or like, you know, the Force Unleashed games, Star Killer.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh yeah, take an old concept, lazily slap it on. You see, guys, fan service.
But even then, you know, it's like it just raises so many questions of how the First Order has
There's too many questions.
It's like you raise so many questions of the First Order's resources. Like, no matter what explanation I've heard out of anything from all these different conflicting explanations, nothing explains how the First Order has so much, you know, power and so much.
They should be the underdogs like the Rebel Alliance were. How much more interesting would that be? They're the underdogs. They could have been like Death Watch from the Clone Wars TV show. The underdogs who were trying to usurp power and, like, you know, and they do covert but rather terrible terroristic type methods.
Yeah.
And like hit and run tactics, like constantly, like, and so while yes, they're still a smaller organization, they still create a lot of death and destruction even with a small number. Like, that is both interesting but still scary.
Yeah. Well, and it's a completely new idea that the bad guys are actually the ones who are at the disadvantage.
Yeah, like, do something new.
Well, and someone pointed out that, you know, it would have been far more interesting for Kylo's character had he chosen the bad guys.
Was
Mauler.
I think it was Mauler who said that.
Well, yeah, if you had him choose the bad guys, not because they're the ones in power, but because he genuinely believes that they're right.
And their ideals, and that's why he sympathized with the underdogs.
Right.
Rather than just being another generic villain who's
power.
Who's driven to power.
Well,
like, oh, okay, sure.
Yeah, I've never seen that before.
Yeah, especially not in Star Wars. And then Palpatine.
Well, and, you know, in Snoke, too, in The Force Awakens. It's like...
Oh, gosh.
It's like...
The wasted potential of Snoke.
It's like we get introduced to him, and they make a big deal about him, and the question is, who is Snoke? Well, the question is, shut up. There is no answer. You know, but because Rian Johnson just tosses him out. But in The Force Awakens, they build him up. But you're still asking a lot of questions because of JJ's mystery box, dangling keys.
Just another mystery box. Just so many freaking stupid mystery boxes. Like, here's a mystery box that I have that I don't think you intended, J.J. Abrams. How the frick did Finn break out of his programming?
Yeah, you know, that was something that made me believe that he was Force sensitive for a while. It's like, okay, so he's... Because they said all this stuff before the movie came out. And this is one of the reasons I was so hyped about
Kyle Katarn is a very popular EU character.
Because Kyle Katarn started off as a stormtrooper, then ended up finding out he was Force sensitive and became a Jedi, and became a very strong Jedi. He was worked with Luke.
I remember we did a video together. It was back when I used to do a lot of YouTube videos. It was when our Luke, Han, Leia video.
Yeah, I believe so.
And in the end of it, we were... Another hindsight. We were talking about how excited we were for The Force Awakens, and one of the things we were talking about is how excited we were for this new trio. And both you and I, like, were saying that the character we were excited to most was for Finn. Like, we were both like so like staunch thinking that Finn was going to be our favorite character.
In terms of the actual character and the possibilities, like, I loved Rey, but Finn had all these interesting ideas that he was a stormtrooper.
We haven't seen this in a movie before. A stormtrooper turned protagonist. That's a new story idea.
Well, and on top of that, they made it very clear that the stormtroopers for the First Order were kidnapped as children, brainwashed with propaganda, and programmed to be soldiers. So someone breaking from that's significant. So the question going in was, what happens with Finn, and how does he develop as a character? The question is, he doesn't. Literally, a switch just flips in his head, and all of a sudden, he's
having panic attacks suddenly, and then he decides to abandon the First Order. But this also makes no sense, because if he was afraid to kill, then why is he suddenly okay with killing a bunch of his own people?
Well, yeah, and this is something that I don't really think that they thought about. When they're killing the stormtroopers, these are conscripted child soldiers that were kidnapped and brainwashed.
Just like him.
Just like Finn. So, but he's okay with killing them. Everyone else is okay.
But he was not okay with killing the Resistance fighters while he was there? And it was because he was seeing his fellow stormtroopers dying? Like, his character motivations makes no sense. He's all over the place. And then he's turned into the comic relief, but also the coward. But then he turns around and becomes a slightly respectable character by the very end of the movie. And then, well, the less we talk about Last Jedi, the better.
Well, and even then, in the Force Awakens, something I always complained about is that Finn ended up becoming the funny black guy, and it made no sense. He should be a serious character. He should be focused. And like when he meets Han Solo, I was like, why didn't he try to kill Han Solo? Shouldn't he be programmed to hate Han, Luke, and Leia? And
like First Order propaganda, did they not have that?
Well,
Which
no,
makes no sense because
that,
there's that whole scene with Hux that they do have propaganda.
Yeah. And we know that they programmed the child soldiers, and
also it's only been like 30 years. What are you doing saying things like the Jedi, like that's all a myth? Like what the frick? Kylo Ren stopped being a Jedi as of The Last Jedi only 15 years ago.
Yeah, and we know that Luke's Jedi Order had been growing.
How are the Jedi a freaking myth?
Well, it makes sense a bit in the original trilogy because it's been 20 years since the Jedi.
Well, and even then, Han's never met a Jedi in his life, so that's why he considered the Force and all that stuff hokey religions.
Because he was only a little kid when the prequels were going on.
And so even then, he's never met a Jedi, so, I mean, that makes sense for a character who's never met a Jedi, but you're telling me, I mean, okay, fine, Rey can call that stuff a myth, which... Okay, she lived on Jakku or like, whatever, but Finn?
Why doesn't Finn know about this? He would have been programmed to hate Luke Skywalker, so when they bring up Luke Skywalker...
I mean, that's the whole reason Kylo Ren's obsessively trying to find the map, because the First Order doesn't want Luke Skywalker to return to the Resistance because they think Luke will help them turn the tide. So, why isn't there propaganda about Luke Skywalker? That makes no freaking sense.
Well, and it's something... I've always liked to draw comparisons to the Halo series with Finn, because like the Stormtroopers, the Spartan 2s, like Master Chief, were taken when they were 6, were brought in by the military, the human military, and were basically brainwashed into being soldiers. Now, to be fair, they did this for good reasons. The whole universe was on the edge of a complete civil war that would basically destroy planets and kill billions because of all the insurrectionists fighting the UNSC. So they created the Spartans programs to fight against that. So it's a whole morally ambiguous situation that is brought up of whether was it right or wrong. The books basically let you decide if it was because of the Spartans they were able to win the war against the Covenant. But one of the things that's really shown in the books is that, especially when you see it from Master Chief's perspective, he went through a similar situation as Finn. I mean, without the First Order propaganda, but that same type of he should be that same type of personality as Master Chief, where he's generally very serious, very military focused, pretty much no nonsense. He can crack a joke here and there. He's still human.
I mean, like other serious characters crack a joke. Obi-Wan cracked a couple of jokes.
Well, yeah, but and you see Master Chief in the
Yoda
book.
cracks jokes.
Well, yeah. You see Master Chief in the books deeply cares about his other Spartans because to them, they were his family. They were, like, all of them, even the ones you don't really see much or you may see once or just named, he knew every single one of them. And sure, he was closest to his own unit, but all of them were like family to him. And then you have Finn, who that should be how
if you go by the EU, Disney's EU, Finn's best friend, Slips?
Slips, yeah.
He was shot by Poe Dameron. So you're telling me in the movie Finn suddenly becomes buddy-buddy with the one that shot his best friend, the one who's the reason why he's having post-traumatic stress disorder because his friend was dying in front of him?
In his arms. And it's like, okay.
But now he's going to turn against the First Order, shoot his own comrades, and side with the one who shot his friend? Disney EU? What?
And if Finn was like really reluctant to kill them, or if he killed them and he felt like even more dread and he had this complete mental breakdown for killing them because these would be like his family, his brothers and sisters in in that army, the people he grew up with, the only people that he would know. It's like you're telling me that there's no effect on that for his character, and that's what really pissed me off about coming out of the movie. It was like I was so expecting there to be that actually to mean something. But then they made him a stormtrooper, and the second he leaves the First Order, boom, him being a stormtrooper is almost totally irrelevant to his character.
Oh yeah, but apparently he's a soldier, but also a janitor?
I mean, I can understand them taking turns, doing labor or doing some work and stuff, but...
You keep contradicting themselves. You're saying that he's supposed to be a soldier. Also, he should be amongst the oldest of the stormtroopers.
Considering that he's in...
The First Order's been only around for like 20, 15 years or something like that.
And Finn would have been... And Finn is like, what, 20? I think he's...
Yeah, he's just a year older than Rey, because Rey's 19.
Rey's 19, yeah, he's 20. So he would be there, or at least in the upper sort of echelon of soldiers.
Yeah, like he should be one of the oldest. And you're telling me this is his first battle?
And wouldn't he have been trained for all of this? Like, we know that...
And they don't have countermeasures for, like, a stormtrooper breaking out of their brainwashing?
Because, if I remember correctly, I believe Hux's father developed the brainwashing technique for the stormtroopers. So they make a big deal out of, like, that being, you know, part of the stormtroopers. They're brainwashed.
Nothing about Finn makes sense.
But nothing of it ever comes up. None of it's relevant. And they make a few mentions of, oh, well, he's never done this before. And it's like, okay, but then why did this happen? What happened? This is one of the reasons why I thought he was Force sensitive when I was watching the movie. Okay, maybe it was the Force that awakened him from it.
No, the movie's called The Force Awakens.
Right, so that's what I was thinking, that it's not just Rey, but also Finn, and maybe even Poe has the Force. And
like, you could have a new generation of Jedi.
Yeah, and, you know, so I was thinking, all right, maybe
and
that's why...
that would be something different. Think about it, a movie where the main characters are all Force sensitive.
Yeah.
I mean, true, I would rather there be, like, one of the characters are non-Force sensitive, because you do need that non-Force sensitive person to be part of the cast, but still, that would still be something new. Like, we could throw out all sorts of things, like, hey, here's something that's new.
Yeah, and speaking of something else, is, I mean, going along with that line of thinking... One of the things that really annoyed me about this movie, at least in hindsight, was that there were no Jedi in the movie. It's like, we know that Luke was starting a new Jedi Order. It's mentioned in the movie. And then they're like, oh yeah, but Kylo Ren just killed off all of the others.
Well, it's the same with the Republic. They're mentioned, and then they're all destroyed. Or at least that one planet. Again, world building, what's that?
Well, and I know, like... I was hoping that we'd get to see something like the prequels. Like, we saw in the prequel era, we saw the Jedi at their height of their power, where they had hundreds of Jedi.
But let's reset everything to how it was in New Hope. Because nobody didn't want to see something new. We couldn't see a new type of Jedi Order doing things differently. Heaven forbid we have an original thought.
Well, and we could have seen we could have seen children from the Skywalker Solo family. We could have seen them as Jedi, because by the time this movie comes out, they would all be in their mid to late 20s.
I'm nostalgic for the time when I thought the worst thing they could have done to Luke Skywalker was he was just not going to be married and have children.
No. You know, I was actually hoping that they would have some good explanation for why he was on that island, but then there's no explanation, there's no reason, it's just...
I mean, take out The Last Jedi. Take out The Last Jedi. Why did Luke go to this Jedi Temple Island? Oh, that's another mystery box.
Well, and I was hoping that maybe he had, like, hidden away his, you know, other students at the temple to protect them. Or
maybe there was, like, some ancient knowledge of Jedi that Luke could learn to help them, like, defeat Snoke or something like that.
Yes, or something like that. Because I was hoping that he was working in secret to help against the First Order, but it would be like how in Return of the Jedi, where he knew he was a target, so he separates himself from everyone so that they're not going to be targeted. They're all looking for him, so he can separate himself to protect people.
Because then he's priority number one, because he's public enemy number one.
Right. So then that would actually be very in character for Luke, that even if we don't see him, even if he's gone for a lot, he's doing this to protect
people. He never, like, contacts Leia or anything? Like, no, screw you. They would know.
It's like, there's no one who knows what he was doing, and it's like, okay, but then he leaves a map that ultimately is revealed that he didn't even want to be found.
Again, that's the problems of The Last Jedi. We're talking about The Force
Awakens.
The Last Jedi is a whole other beast that somehow managed to be even worse than The Force Awakens. But, okay, yeah. Poe? Wow, what a completely wasted character.
You know, I remember when we were watching the movie, in the first few minutes...
I immediately fell in love with Poe.
Poe was a fantastic... He was like the Han Solo.
And to this day, I still think he's the only good character. Like, he actually still is, like, consistently written. Sure, everything else about him, like...
Well, sure, he's
like
in the movie for about 5 minutes.
His circumstances of how he got off Jakku, that's inconsistent.
But as a character, watching him, he's still enjoyable. And I liked...
And I like his actor, too. He's really good.
Yeah, Oscar Isaacs is really... He has a lot of charisma when he's acting.
And none of his lines are, like, stupid lines, because... As much as I like the idea of Finn, I like the idea of Rey, they have a bunch of stupid lines that make me go...
I didn't know there was so much green in the whole galaxy.
And I ran straight to you. I was like, oh, shut up. Don't ever complain about the prequels dialogue to me ever again. The only good line to come from The Force Awakens is that's
not how the Force works. And again, that's mainly because it's used against the movie for misunderstanding how the Force works.
It's amazing how the sequels have lines like this, because even The Last Jedi, we have
incredible.
Amazing.
That's everything you said was wrong.
Or let the past die, kill it if you have to. Like, people have used lines like that just to poke fun at these terrible movies.
We're not going to win by killing what we hate, but by saving what we love.
Then
in essence, the Resistance just blows up behind her. It's like, shut up!
Shut up, you moron!
You didn't save my life, you ruined my death.
Stupid character. But again, that's The Last Jedi. But oh man, it actually really pisses me off because if there's no scenes of Poe and Rey interacting until The Last Jedi, and even then it's like a 5-second scene.
What's really funny is that in the novelization for The Force Awakens, Rey and Poe do meet. They do have a meeting at the end, and then of course they completely ignore.
But since Finn's in a coma, what does it matter? I want these three. They're supposed to be the new trio.
Wait, no, that's something that really pisses me off. Is that
because we have Anakin and Padme and Obi-Wan all interacting, and in the Clone Wars TV show, you had instead it was Anakin and Obi-Wan and Ahsoka. And then you have Luke, Han, and Leia. I'm like, you have trio characters who will have scenes together, and they all play off each other really well.
When we talked about this in that one topic video,
the Luke, Han, and Leia video.
It says the trios are so great, and they advertised Poe, Finn, and Rey as the new trio. They mentioned them as the new three main characters.
Here's our new stars. Like, these are your new characters.
And I remember
follow in the footsteps of Luke, Han, and Leia.
They had so many promotional photos where it shows the three of them together.
And you could tell these actors, Oscar, Daisy, and John, they have chemistry together. They're obviously friends. They work well together, and yet you don't stick them in scenes. All three of them together?
Well, and Poe has such a minor role, and to find out that he was originally designed as...
Just to die?
Just to die after about 5 minutes of screen time.
Yeah, like that plane crash scene or whatever with the TIE fighter, that was supposed to be it. Like, he was actually supposed to legitimately die there. But then they suddenly realized, oh, wait, no, we need to bring him back because of, one, we actually have a decent actor, and two, we need somebody to blow up the Death Star.
Well, and I remember...
Oh, I'm sorry, Starkiller Base.
Well, I remember... from what I've seen reading, I think it was like an interview about the meeting that JJ had with Oscar Isaacs. He brought him in, and they flew him out to a meeting to say, okay, we're hiring you. We want you for this new role of Poe Dameron.
And Star Wars, who wouldn't be excited?
Well, and he was like, okay, you're gonna be gay. The movie's gonna open up with you. You're a big character, and he's like, yeah. And he's like, then you're gonna die.
It's like, what?
And I remember saying that, I think it was described that Oscar Isaacs went sheet white, everything about him was just deflated, that he was going to be this big new character. Oh, you're going to die after 5 minutes. And then I think they felt bad that they completely flew this guy, I think it was to France or something, and then they told him, oh yeah, you're going to be basically a meaningless character.
Oh yeah, you're just going to be Sean Bean.
Well, and then they probably felt bad about that, and then they decided to give him more.
Well, because even then, because of all the other parts of the story, basically did not change. Like, the whole scene, the stupid thing on Starkiller Base, which means Finn, Rey, Han, Chewie, all would have been down there. Luke's somewhere else. Leia's somewhere else. So, who is going to be the one to do the big killing shot to Starkiller Base?
Was it going to be a no-name?
Crap. We don't have any major character.
Let's just bring...
Poe Dameron!
Let's bring him back after advertising the bejeebers out of him. And, they did that with so many characters. They did that with Hux. They did that with Phasma.
Oh, gosh. Phasma is the worst of it.
They built her up as this new... They wanted her to be the new Boba Fett.
They literally advertised her as the big, the next Boba Fett.
Well, it's
and instead it's some random stormtrooper with the cattle prod. Traitor!
TR-8R.
I know he has an actual name, but nobody calls him that. Everybody calls him TR-8R.
And it's it's like you have these characters who could be interesting. I made a whole topic video just on Phasma and the wasted potential of her character.
Such wasted potential. It actually really angers me how much wasted potential she is, because she sounded like a Palpatine zealot. The fact that she
was. Sure, no, she took his Naboo Senator Cruiser. She melted down parts of the hull for her armor.
That's
fanatical. But it's not in the movie.
Why isn't she a fanatical character? She should be this fanatical, diehard First Order or Palpatine fan.
Yeah, so
like long live Emperor Palpatine type character. But she's not.
And she's not even all that dedicated to the First Order, because they put a gun on her, she instantly...
Oh yeah, except the freaking chrome outfit's supposed to protect you from blaster bolts. That's the whole point.
So thanks Last Jedi for making that seem even dumber in hindsight.
And I was like, well, that's just dumb. Even in The Force Awakens, they're all holding blasters to her head, and she like decides to bend to their will. Like that shouldn't work on her. She's literally in a laser protected outfit that can withstand. Like, that should be no threat to her. Well, she should be like, haha, screw you, I'm calling for backup. I think even how you should have ended.
They did that where she called for backup. But why? But wouldn't she be a character who would rather die than bow to the whims?
Yeah, if she was actually threatened, she should be. If she's such a Palpatine zealot, she should be. And that's the problem. We're given these cool ideas, but they don't follow through with them.
No, and all these ideas that we heard about before going into the movie are. They're not even...
Just broken promises.
Right. And one thing I remember about Hux, a lot of people were asking JJ that Hux is a general, but he's only like 32 or something.
Yeah, he's a young character.
He's very young for a general, and then he's just like, wait till you see the movie. There's a reason for that. No reason. And I'm like, okay.
And it's a shame because I do like his actor too.
Yeah.
Though personally, if it were me, I would have casted Donald Gleason as Ben Skywalker.
I know that was a theory that people had that
because he looks a lot like Mark Hamill.
Yeah.
Also, he's a redhead.
Yeah.
So you could have had, son of Mara Jade and Luke Skywalker.
Yeah, I know a lot of people were really hoping, for that, but it's like, but then nothing. His character is pretty much meaningless.
So meaningless, and it's a shame because he's also an interesting character because he is fanatical, and this is the first time we've seen a character on equal footing with your Vader clone character, because it was different. The dynamic between Tarkin and Vader, because it was obviously Tarkin had more power, but Vader respected him, so therefore he allowed it.
Now we have a General Hux,
who is on equal footing. So these two are basically on equal footing in the eyes of the Supreme Leader Snoke. So like you have now Tarkin and Vader as basically equal in political power, basically.
And you had Hux being able to talk back to Kylo, and he couldn't do anything because he doesn't have control over him. Like, this stuff was interesting.
Those were some good scenes. Like the one scene where I think he was just like, Careful, Ren.
Yeah.
Like I liked that scene, like just that tension, and we never see anything of that again.
They only have, like, Hux and Phasma combined have about 5 minutes of total screen time.
Hux definitely has more, but still. Like, what a waste of a character. Phasma is probably the biggest waste of a character. Like, why even bring her back in The Last Jedi?
Well, and it's because they make such a big deal out of her. Because I remember so much...
Her actions and her character.
I mean, it's all the interviews, all the press releases, everything they talk
I wonder if she had more scenes that just got cut. And if that's the case, then I really feel sorry for her actress. And that's the other thing. You got a big-name Game of Thrones actor to play her, and you waste her?
You don't even see her face at all. It's like, okay, but then what is the... outside of her being tall...
Like, she's an athletic, beautiful woman.
So,
like,
but why...
It's like a crime to not show her face.
Well, why would you bring her in? You hire a big-name actor... Like, okay, something like Daniel Craig, that was just a gag.
A little cameo gag, but it's still...
But for someone like her who's built to be a big character, they made a big deal. They were like, we got Gwendolyn Christie from Game of Thrones.
First female Star Wars villain. Okay, no, first maybe in a movie, but Asajj Ventress, and as well as other characters from the EU still exist. Twits.
Mara Jade was a villain.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like, but... You have these things, you have these great things, and even Domhnall Gleeson, I heard, he's still a fairly well-known actor, so you hire these people who play these characters, and you don't even do anything with them. Like with the prequels, or the prequels in the original trilogy, when you hired big-name actors like Alec McGuinness, Ian McDermott, and Christopher Lee, you had these well-known... Like
Samuel L. Jackson. And even Ewan McGregor was actually a pretty household name. Granted, it wasn't in a movie like Star Wars, but he still, because he did things like Moulin Rouge and stuff like that.
Yeah, people knew who he was, but you hire these actors, and these actors do great jobs because you give them, interesting stuff to work with. And it's like, and it doesn't really...
And then you hire the smaller actors. Like, at the time, Natalie Portman wasn't a big name.
No. Especially 1999.
No. She was a teenager.
So it's like, yeah, you hire these, actors, and it's like, and you know what, and that's what George Lucas knew what to do with these actors, but here, like, J.J. Abrams, it's like he doesn't even know what he's doing with
these new talents. Like, he's just wasting them.
Well, and how many times did we see in scenes with, like, especially Daisy Ridley and John Boyega, that their reactions and their facial expressions...
So lost and confused. Like, you could tell they're not giving much direction. Like, you said it yourself, about how, like, every problem that people say that they have with the prequels, you instead point those right at the sequels, because they have those problems, whereas the prequels have those problems really minimal.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about bad direction from the director. Like, okay, there were some scenes that were kind of wooden in the prequels, but when you look at scenes in The Force Awakens...
Just in abundance.
You have this...
And these clueless expressions. At the very least, even people who hated the prequels, I think even Doug Walker said, like, when you have no dialogue and it's just facial expressions, Hayden Christensen can produce a lot of really emotional, even scary faces.
Yeah. Well, and we did that a lot in the end of Revenge of the Sith, where he doesn't have much dialogue if he's not, interacting with Obi-Wan or Padme, but he just has this terrifying look in his face.
Or whenever he's just sitting there and you could see this turmoil and he's just crying and he didn't have one line of dialogue that didn't need to tell you anything. And I was like, meanwhile, and I was like, yeah, there was some hokey writing. There was, but I still enjoy it despite that. And also... I'm sorry, but the prequels have a lot of memes that came from some of that hokey dialogue.
Good memes. Like,
great memes.
The whole sand memes, as much as people make fun
and
of
there's an abundance of memes that have come out from that one
people to this day
line.
2002 was when the Attack of the Clones came out. We are still, a decade and a half later,
still seeing memes about the sand line.
Yeah, and it's still, I mean, it makes sense in context when he's comparing the sand of Tatooine to Naboo. It's just a goofy, over-the-top line.
Really dumb line to say when you're trying to hit on a girl, but that's...
Apparently it worked for Batman.
But that's what makes it so funny, but that's the thing. The prequels had lines so dumb, they were funny. They were, like, legit funny. The sequels have lines so dumb that make me go, shut up. Just shut up.
And so much of the dialogue is not memorable in The Force Awakens. It's like, outside of, that's not how the Force works, I have difficulty remembering any major line. Because in the prequels, you have so many memorable lines. It's like, you have fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, hate leads to suffering.
And everything that came out of Obi-Wan Kenobi's mouth. Literally every single...
It's over, Anakin. I have the high ground. The high ground is still... Yeah, another happy landing.
Oh, not good.
This is glass. This is why I hate flying. You see, you can remember...
You don't want to sell me death sticks. You want to go home and rethink your life.
That's still one of the best scenes in the entire franchise. But you see, when you look at this stuff, even the goofy stuff is still, enjoyable. And even if it's just for making memes out of it because it's so goofy, you can still do it. But
it's fun. Memes are fun.
Yeah. The prequels, at the very least, were a fountain for memes.
Just a gold mine.
But with The Force Awakens, the only memes that I remembered were it's not how the Force works and
and Kylo Ren is a man baby.
Yeah, but that was never really funny.
It's a meme though, but you do see it. People make fun of Kylo Ren for being a man-child.
He didn't really become a meme until Ben Solo.
Oh yeah, Ben Solo. Yeah, there was a meme.
But The Force Awakens isn't that memorable, and it feels like it's trying so hard to copy
It's because it was playing it safe.
Right.
It was trying too hard to be A New Hope 2.0, or really, what I like to... I think one of the reviewers I was watching, they called it the Kroger brand version of A New Hope.
Yes.
And I'm like, I called it Diet New Hope, but I like that better. Kroger brand version.
Versus name brand.
Geez, yes, that's exactly what it is. But oh gosh, Kylo Ren, he's such a man-child, it pisses me off.
Well, and the man is 30 years old, but he acts like he's a whiny 13-year-old boy.
But all those scenes you people criticize Anakin for being whiny, really he only had 2 scenes which were whiny, but really, in context, it made sense why he'd be upset, like when his mother died, or the fact that the Jedi Order practically insulted him by saying, yeah, you can be a council but not being a master. That is considered an insult.
Yeah.
It's saying, yeah, you're... fine, we'll acknowledge it, but you're not good enough to play with the big boys. That is a bit of an insult.
Man,
I'm sorry if Anakin does feel insulted for all that he's done. He's a general at his age.
Especially when you watch the Clone Wars and you understand all the stuff he's went through.
And I'm just
you can understand why he's doing that, but with Kylo, I think this is a guy who did a great video. He's said the writing mistakes that ruined Kylo Ren, and one of the things he talked about is that they used him for comedy. And they
yeah, that undercuts the threat of your villain. And while we did laugh, and to this day, I do still kind of chuckle at that scene where you hear him screaming and breaking stuff, and those stormtroopers just like
turn around and leave.
Nope.
Yeah, we mentioned that in our video.
Like that was funny, and I still chuckle at that because okay, yeah, that is funny. Where they're like, nope. But the problem is you shouldn't do comedy at the expense of making your villain like a joke. Like your villain's supposed to be intimidating. This is supposed to be your Darth Vader.
Yeah, and when you look at Darth Vader, the number of times that any kind of comedy was around him was minimal. Like
very minimal. Like in fact, most of it is like fear around other characters.
Yeah.
Like realizing, oh crap, I gotta report this to Vader, and you kind of sit there laughing, ha ha, dead men walking.
And a lot of it intends to be some sort of like black comedy.
Well, or Vader sitting at the table, like just randomly. But I guess the fact that he made this elaborate setup just for this.
He's like, join us for dinner, and then Han pulls out his blaster. It's like, that's sort of funny.
Like that's unintentionally kind of a little bit funny. And like it's scary, but also funny. But Kylo Ren was not scary and funny. He was just funny and pathetic.
He was scary for the first 5 minutes of the movie.
Yeah, and then after that opening scene, which is a cool opening scene, but after that, nope, not anymore.
Well, especially once he took off his mask.
Oh gosh,
and when you look at his mask, what they should have done, he should have taken this mask off at the bridge scene. Because you want him to be humanized in that moment, so you wait until that moment to reveal.
As stupid as Ben Solo is, whenever Han calls out to him, that should have been the moment he took off his mask.
Not when he's interrogating Rey, trying to be intimidating. Why would you take your intimidating mask off with the voice distortion?
They just wanted to show off how pretty he is.
Except that's not the whole point. That he wants to be intimidating.
Or is he trying to see that, oh look, Rey, I'm human, sympathize with me? But she obviously wasn't buying it, and you're trying to interrogate her, so why...
Why would you be trying to gain sympathy with her?
Why would a Sith Lord ever play good cop?
Yeah, that's what it was. It's a Sith playing good cop. No.
And then he immediately jumped straight into bad cop. So what was the point of that anyway?
So wouldn't it be more intimidating if he walks in, doesn't say anything, and then starts interrogating her?
I mean, if you had another character with him and they were playing his good cop...
Like maybe if Hux was there playing good cop.
Well, I mean, because I do think Donald Gleason could do that. He probably could, because I think he was supposed to be the Tarkin of the movies. Like, you can have him present himself to be sophisticated and stuff like that. And then Ren is the unstable one.
Right. You really could have made that work, except they never elaborate on that dynamic. And
there's just too much too much wasted potential. Too much copy-paste A New Hope.
Well, and there's so much stuff that you could do with this.
So much that just needs to be changed, and just,
If you wanted to make this a proper Star Wars movie, I mean... You'd have to change a lot.
I mean, we have our own ideas, which are the complete overhaul, but here's some very basic changes, I would say, that would just make this a better movie. And I thought of this very quickly. I told him to it offhand on a Snapchat, these ideas that came to my mind literally in the span of 10 minutes. And this isn't me, carefully constructing some big... No, it's just ideas that came to my mind. First off, as people brought up, Snoke should have been Darth Plagueis. He should have. I'm sorry. That would have bring the whole trilogy all together, and you wouldn't need to explain too much. Because of then that...
His character would have been mentioned. And in Episode 7, I'm sorry, but it's okay to make references to things from the previous 6 episodes.
Well, plus that's one of the things that people liked about the prequels, even prequel haters, because they thought they wanted to learn the mystery of Darth Plagueis. So yeah, answer that question. Say maybe he faked his death, or that he somehow transferred his mind or spirit or whatever into another body.
Or something.
Just something. And fine. And that's why he looks all decayed or something like that. That could have worked. And also freaking Andy Serkis. You have a good actor.
Oh.
But whatever. So there's that change. Simple change. Boom. And it has simple explanations. It doesn't need a big whole long history of it. And it's another really good instant change. One of our changes was, if you had to do the whole Kylo Ren was Han Solo's son, his name should have been Bail. We even said this in our initial thoughts video when we first came out.
The child should be Bail, after Leia's father.
Or, I don't know, maybe name him after any other character that you met in the original trilogy that, like Leia and Han befriended, something.
Lando.
Yeah, Lando, why not? Lando would have been like, you named your piss poor Sith son after me.
Chewie Jr.
That's why he became a Sith. You named me Chewbacca. Chewbacca Jr. But Bail would have made sense, like, because of, Leia's adoptive father. I'm like,
especially because of the role he played in the prequels.
I'm like, heck, or even Anakin. You could have named it that, because then it would have been like, sure, it would have been stupid as Anakin 2.0, but hey, it would have been better.
He's already Anakin 2.0 anyway, so you might as well.
Might as well. I'm like, or like, because of freaking, I'm sorry, it wouldn't have made any sense. Leia didn't know Obi-Wan at all. Han spent a couple hours with this guy.
And he only knew him as Obi-Wan. Remember, Ben Kenobi was the name that only...
Well, Luke did call him Ben. So even that, but to Han, that's not a big enough impact. The one who left the impact on was on Luke. That's why in the EU, his son is named Ben Skywalker, because that's who left the impact on. Not anyone else, on Luke. And so out of all of them, if Luke has a kid, that makes sense. Like, just, so, like, but with Bail, that would have made sense because of, obviously, even though we never seen really many scenes where, actually, or any scenes other than expanded material where Leia and her adopted father interact, you can tell Leia loves her father by how much she models herself after Bail Organa, because she's a politician like her father, like a senator, and she's, like, still strongly a part of the Rebel Alliance just like her father. Like, so, like, show something like that, and that would be a nice little Easter egg, because out of prequels, fans do like Bail Organa. Like, even prequel haters like Bail Organa.
Well, I remember in when he showed up in Rogue One, the theater was like,
yeah, everyone was like either gasping or clapping, like even my theater, like I heard everybody. I even had one person, like I heard one girl scream, "My real daddy!" And I burst out laughing, so I kind of ruined the scene, which is why anytime we watch Rogue One, you will hear unintentionally me screaming, "My real daddy." Just because of that moment. And it made me laugh, so I'm like, well, that scene was just ruined. But whatever, it was still funny. And it's just like, he has got a huge impact, so why not? Something like that. But I think would have made a much better change, would have been a much more original idea, while still harkening back something to the original trilogy, was what if instead you confront the character and you heard Ben, but instead you realize it's not Ben Solo, but Ben Skywalker. If he's supposed to be supposedly the fusion of Ben Skywalker and Jason Solo, then why the bloody frick is the only aspect of Ben Skywalker just the name Ben? If you're really going to make him a fusion of these two characters, he needs to have aspects of both. A son of the Skywalker legacy that, turned to the dark side. Okay, fine, that's your Jason part. And I was like, but what if he was Luke's son? What if Luke's son got kidnapped by the First Order and was brainwashed into being one of the Knights of Ren by Darth Plagueis, and that's the reason why Luke left? Because he's been on a search for his missing son for, like, these long time. Like, I don't know, like, say he got kidnapped when he was, like, I don't know, like 4 or 5 years old or something. And then that would also make him a foil to Rey, and not a romantic one, because I'm sorry, no. But still, then that could give you something for Rey to why she would reach out to him in The Last Jedi. Because if she too, like, was missing her family, and she understands in a way.
Especially if Rey is Rey Skywalker, and that would be her brother, that would be even more heartfelt.
Well, I mean, even if she was saying she was Rey Solo, then she's reaching out to her cousin. Yeah. And trying to save her cousin. And, like, I'm like, because Skywalker's, the family, that's kind of what's the bread and butter of Star Wars. That is the lifeblood. It's the lifeblood of the family. And it should be about family. Hope and family. That's kind of the biggest things about Star Wars. It was the downfall of the prequels was Anakin's obsessive love of his family, and then why he turned the dark side, and that's why he ultimately redeemed himself in the end, was because of his love for his son. The reason why Luke persevered so much was because of his love for his friends and his family. Like, they are the theme of Star Wars. They are Star Wars. Like, you cannot think Star Wars without thinking Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker or Leia. Like, yes, you have the other characters, but the other characters are kind of part of the Skywalker family too. Like, oh, you think Han Solo? Oh, right, married to Leia. You think C-3PO and R2-D2? Oh, right, Padme and Anakin and Leia's droids. Yeah. Like, it's about this family. Like, they are the focus. They are. Like, and you could do these things. Like, I just don't understand. And, like, you could have made it deep, you could have made it emotional, and it would be a reverse, like, Luke, I am your father moment, where instead it's the villain, it's like,
I am your son.
Instead the villain finding out that his father is as hated in me, but instead on the good guy side, it would be like a flip.
Yeah.
Of what Luke went through, and then he'd have to question himself of everything it does, and that is what could humanize Kylo Ren. Not this stupid, I feel the pull of the light.
Stab.
like no, like what if like legit his feel of the pull of the light is the fact that he realizes that his mother and father are these two prominent Jedis, Luke Skywalker, Mara Jade, people he was trained to hate.
And he legitimately feels like that's who he really is in this.
And then also that would give something great for Mara, because then she would have been, if you like kept her backstory similar to the EU, where she's a former dark side user.
Well, and they could have even, I've said this a lot, she could have even been an Inquisitor that worked directly for Palpatine. Like, you bring in the Inquisitors,
which is already in Disney canon from Rebels, even though they wasted them, but still they're a thing. And I'm like, but there's a lot of things you could have done that's already in the established Disney canon that could have fixed this. Like, there's other things here and there. Like, what if instead Finn was not the one who broke Poe out? What if Poe broke himself out, grabbed Finn because he didn't know his way around that ship and needed to get a ship, and so he grabbed Finn, like, held him at gunpoint just to lead him to a ship, but then somehow Finn was pulled along for the adventure, but by befriending Poe and by befriending Rey, and also never have Poe disappear, have him there the whole time on Jakku with them so that way he meets Rey too. And it's because of the influence of Rey, it's because of the influence of Poe that Finn starts to slowly develop as a character and starts to care about the Resistance. In a way, it would make him like a villainous homage to Han Solo.
Yeah.
Like, and you have these characters interacting, and another change I would have made is Rey doesn't have piloting experience randomly where she's just so amazing. Yes, okay, the movie she's like, I don't know how, and then the EU's like, oh, well, she had flight simulation. No, what if instead she learns how to fly later on by Poe, and instead really she just make her the mechanic. Like, instead she lived in the Millennium Falcon. Like, say it was down there and it was just stuck there, and she's just been living on this ship, and that's how she knows how to work this ship so well. She knows it even better than Han Solo, because of all she's been doing is just tearing the ship apart and putting it back together her entire life. Like, yeah, you could say, well, Han Solo's been doing that too, but yeah, but what if, because it's in such a dilapidated state, she actually restored it, and because there's new technology, she would know it better, because if there's new technology now that's spliced together on this ship that Han wouldn't know what it is, because it's not the stuff that was originally there. Like, you give it something, and then you establish each of these characters as something. Have Finn be the sharpshooter, which would make him a hilarious contrast to stormtroopers, because he's the one who can actually aim for crap.
Especially when they already established in his backstory that he is one of the best stormtroopers.
Like, so do that as his thing. And then you have Poe be the pilot, and have Rey be the mechanic.
You have basic covers everything.
And Rey would be a Mary Sue, because guess what? She's not great at everything. Have her great at certain key things, and yes, she's learning the Force, but she doesn't know how to use it properly. Like Luke.
Just like Luke, yeah.
Like, what's so wrong with her earning it? Like, I like female characters who earn these things. Like,
I want to be able to root for them, not go.
Like, Leia wasn't just handed everything. Ahsoka wasn't just handed everything. That Padme had adversity. Like, these are good female characters. Ventress didn't always win. In fact, she lost a lot. But everyone liked Ventress.
Yeah.
I'm like, but, like, what's so wrong with, like, if the female characters are supposed to be equal to male characters, then why the bloody crap can they not go through the same things that male characters go through? Like, I don't know, character development?
I mean, if you actually gave Rey... If you balanced her abilities out so that she's not overpowered, say she's a really good mechanic... She's really good with, like, working, like, ships and stuff, but she's not as good as piloting. And you could have her be a...
Have her develop that.
Yeah, develop that. And then develop her, you know, Force skills.
Like, let's say she was learning from Poe how to fly the Millennium Falcon, and he was teaching her, and let's say that by the fact that he was teaching her how to fly, that helps her instinctively learn things better with the Force, kind of like Luke, but at the same time, she's still very inexperienced. Like, she can't win in a fight with Kylo Ren, and instead, the movie would end, as Mark Hamill would say, was where Finn and Rey are in trouble, Kylo Ren is, like, bearing down on them, and then suddenly you see the lightsaber, like, fly up, and then Luke catches it. Or somebody else suggested this. Somebody said, what if instead Leia came to the planet, and Leia's the one who caught the lightsaber?
That would have been good.
Because then it would give Leia something to do!
Leia does nothing in The Force Awakens. She's completely useless.
Like, and then it would be what people's biggest gripes were, granted, until The Last Jedi came out, is that Leia does nothing, especially with her Force abilities. You're telling me in all these years she never trained? Oh, except randomly in The Last Jedi? Like, look at that,
she could resurrect herself
from the dead, except then she does nothing else at all for the rest of the movie. Like, even whenever they're all trapped in a cavern and you could have a Force user move the rocks, Leia's right there, and apparently she's Space Jesus and can resurrect herself, but apparently she can't move a couple rocks, but no worries, here comes Space Jesus Rey. She moves the rocks for you.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
It's so amazing how just a handful of detail changes would have dramatically improved The Force Awakens.
Also, like I said, you make Phasma a fanatical person.
Well, and give her an actual real conflict with Finn. Have her fight. Maybe she would win her fight against him, and then maybe throughout the trilogy they fight.
Like, have them a rivalry, like an established thing. Like, it would, because that's an interesting dynamic. Like, she's angry because it's one of her soldiers who was part of her unit, and she feels betrayed, and he's angry because of she's basically one of the people that brainwashed him.
So then they fight, and and in fact, I'll actually bring up a reference to Metal Gear Solid 3, because in that game, Snake's mentor, the boss, defects to the Soviet Union, and there's a big deal about the hand-to-hand fighting style that they both use, and you see throughout the games when they fight that at the beginning of the game, when she fights, she completely whips him. She destroys him for the first couple of fights. Then around near the mid to end of the game, he actually starts getting a hand up on her, and then by the final fight between them, which is the big finale, he does end up winning. And you have this progression throughout the game about how Snake he moves from being below her to her equal to being better because of his experience and his skill and his adaptation. You can have that with Finn and Phasma, where she was his superior, and he's throughout the trilogy he would train, and especially if they utilize time skips.
Oh, but movies, no, let's have her thrown out a garbage chute, and then the next movie
just show up, just to die. I guess maybe she'll just show up again with no explanation.
Like, talk about Joker immunity.
Yeah.
If that's the case, but okay, but those are some minor changes. Now he's got a big rewrite.
Now,
I've added some of my own ideas to it.
Yeah, she's definitely helped me a lot when it came to this. Now, originally, I'm not going to go through every little detail because I did actually write a write-up. It was
we'll have a post link done.
Yeah, literally the entirety of The Force Awakens. I wrote basically a draft of what I would do, and a lot of it has some similar things, and I don't really remember all the details, and I did end up changing them, but...
Well, one of the biggest ones is the main villain as opposed to Snoke.
Right.
Which you EU fans would like this better.
Yeah, I actually based him off of Thrawn. He would still be played by Andy Serkis, but Andy Serkis would be Thrawn. I mean, I did make him a human because, to fit in the timeline, he'd been a human as a younger, like a lieutenant.
Well, because the Empire was very, racist against other aliens, which is why you didn't see them working for them unless they were bounty hunters.
Right. So, he would have been a fanatical, after the end of Return of the Jedi, and basically the Emperor is dead, Vader is dead, the Empire is fractured, he starts gathering these forces, particularly after the Battle of Jakku, where everyone is basically lost. He starts, pulling all these, strings and manipulating people, killing people.
Yeah, but his whole personality, everything is just like Thrawn.
Right, and it's funny because I created his character before I knew anything about Thrawn.
Yeah, you asked me some things. And I was actually like, oh wow, that's actually really good. And I kept just quizzing him because of that's what you got to do whenever you create ideas. You got to try to have your friend play devil advocate and poke holes in them, and if they can answer them, they know they got a good idea, and he could answer them.
Right, because I'd always flesh out his character,
which shows he puts more thought into things than JJ.
Yeah, because
we're just fans, and we're putting thought into this. Yeah, we are not getting multi-million-dollar money, and quite frankly, I don't care if I don't. But at the very least,
I want the people who are making money to do better.
Effort. Just give us effort. But anyways.
Yeah, so I really wanted his character to be intellectual, and he's not a Force user. He doesn't have any of that. But he uses his smarts and his cleverness to manipulate everything so that he becomes the supreme leader of the First Order. And he's playing all these political cards so that from the outside, the First Order looks like oh well, it's just a group that took in the refugees from the destruction of the empire. You know, giving them the jobs and making sure that they had a living after everything was gone. Making it sound all
like altruistic.
Altruistic, but he's really rebirthing the empire. And he's been secretly developing his
And Leia knows this, but Leia can't prove it.
Right, and because of all the bureaucracy of the New Republic.
Oh, I forgot one of the other changes I would add to my minor one, but it would kind of dipped a little bit into ours too. General Han Solo still would have been a thing.
Yeah.
Also, Leia would be Chancellor Leia, because
yes.
I'm sorry, she's a politician, not military, she's politician, like she's political, like Leia knows all about the politics. Yes, she helped with the rebellion, but I'm sorry, she's a senator. She's a princess.
It would have been so much better if she took over as chancellor after.
Also, how more empowering, since you're going with that feminism, how more empowering is it for a woman, instead of saying making her a general, making her basically the equivalent of the president? Because the galaxy is essentially the same thing as a country, at least in this expanded universe and stuff like that. So have her be the leader, the figurehead of the Republic. Like, how much more amazing would that be for Leia's character? Anyways.
Yeah. So Thrawn would be the leader, and he hates Luke, and that's why he focuses everything, because he knows the story. He knows that Luke had helped destroy the Empire. So he's hunting down Luke and all the Jedi, and he starts trying to recruit him for Knights of Ren, who would basically be his Inquisitors. So he starts trying to find these Force-sensitive people and ends up stumbling onto Kylo Ren. Now, the biggest change, this was actually where everything started from. My biggest change, Kylo Ren isn't related to the Skywalker Solo family. He's actually Poe's brother.
Poe Dameron.
Poe Dameron's brother. So I really wanted to sort of reflect, it's basically a combination of the Luke and Vader dynamic with the Obi-Wan and Anakin dynamic, where you have that brotherly relationship like Obi-Wan and Anakin, but you have the redemption story of, Luke and Vader, where Poe is desperately trying to bring his brother back to the light side after he had fallen and was manipulated by Thrawn into serving the new Empire, the First Order, and this explains his.
And this would explain why that Anakin's destroying the Sith permanently is why the dark side hasn't fully come back, because the Knights of Ren aren't true Sith.
Right. There's no proper training.
Because Thrawn can't train them. Right. He can give them books and holocrons and everything, and he can give them all to Kylo Ren, who has the most potential out of all of them.
And I really made Kylo Ren a very intellectual, essentially a Sith nerd, where he obsessively worships the past Sith, which is why his mask is very Darth Vader or Revan-like, where he's trying to model himself after these past Sith, because he's trying to invoke them and their intimidations. So so he's trying to be like that. That's why his lightsaber, as they established, is an ancient design. So he's desperately trying to be that. So he has skill, and he has done a long time of training, but he doesn't have.
And there will be other Knights of Ren characters that actually would get establishment in The Last Jedi.
Well, and one of them I actually came up with was sort of like the quote the Dooku of the group, where he's a little more refined, and he's still a sociopath, but he has conflicts with Ren because he's like his second in command, but he obviously wants to pull a Sith move and take over, but they can't, he can't do that because of the political, machinations.
Well, plus Kylo's more powerful.
Kylo's more powerful, so he can't do this stuff. So, then he would come in, there would be conflicts with them, and of course you always see the Sith never get along properly. Mm-hmm. So, but I really wanted Kylo Ren, and you do actually see him, despite him doing bad stuff, he is, sympathetic, because he doesn't commit all of the mass murder that Kylo Ren does in the movies. He actually is, unlike, I feel a pull of light, he actually would be struggling. Well, and I did have this wonderful idea of the bridge scene with Poe and Kylo, which would be the first time where he takes off his mask and he calls out his brother's real name. And they meet, and you see how, where Poe is trying to bring him back, and he ends up getting angry, and it's an understandable anger, because he has this internal conflict with him, and he's just like, he can't, he doesn't know what to do, and he actually doesn't kill Poe.
Injures him.
He injures him, and he throws him back because he can't deal with it, and then he uses his lightsaber to cut the bridge so that he can't come back. So he can't come after him, and then you actually understand. Okay, no, he may be bad, but he still has, there is legitimate good in him. You can see, and this is actually...
That's what made Vader sympathetic. Vader's done horrible, awful things, but at the end of the day, Vader never crossed the line and hurt his own family. I mean, okay,
he didn't kill.
He's hurt his own family, but I mean, he's never murdered his own family.
He didn't kill Luke, but, and this would be
he didn't kill Padme.
Right. So in the...
Hurt them, disappointed them greatly, but never killed them, Kylo Ren.
So yeah, and that would be where you have, it'd be understandable where instead of having Rey go after Kylo Ren and trying to redeem him, you have Poe, because he has a personal stake in this, and he would spend the trilogy wanting to redeem his brother, and knowing, he would even say that there's still good in him, because you have that...
Because you gotta echo lines.
You echo the lines. And that would make sense in that context, that he understands...
Unlike the forced context of Last Jedi.
Right. So you would have that, and you would care about that. It would also give Poe his own story throughout the trilogy of what he's doing, instead of just following everyone around. And but one of the biggest changes, and she was actually a big help with this, was the children of the Skywalker Solo family that would be in the movies.
First off, Rey is a Skywalker. She'd be Rey Skywalker.
Yeah, she would be the middle child. There would be...
First, Ben Skywalker.
Ben Skywalker.
Because Ben Skywalker's awesome. I love him. He's one of my favorite EU characters.
Then there's Rey Skywalker, and then there's Big Skywalker.
Big Skywalker, because of why not? Why wouldn't Luke name a friend after his best friend Biggs, who died in A New Hope?
Right. So then you have them all. You would have Ben would be very. He would be kind of Obi-Wan-ish, and it would also, because he's trying to model himself after his father, who had modeled himself after Obi-Wan, so and also they could have spent time with Ghost Obi-Wan, so he has learned the ways of the sass.
He's trying to model himself after his namesake,
Yeah, and so...
Rey would fairly be the same,
and then,
less Mary Sue-ish.
And Biggs would be more pilot. Now, of course, he still has Jedi training. His dad's Luke Skywalker.
Yeah.
But he wants to be a pilot. That's his thing.
That's his favorite thing about his father is his piloting skills, and
this is the guy who flew and destroyed the Death Star. And
that's his thing. He wants to be just like that.
Right.
And he would obviously admire Poe Dameron for his flying skills too.
Right. And and actually another thing is that I would have established that Poe and his brother, who became Kylo, grew up with the Skywalker Solos as childhood friends. So the Skywalker Solo kids know Kylo and know who, and they find out who he is.
Because their families were all part of the Prominent in the Rebellion.
And we know that Poe's parents were friends with Luke and Leia.
Yeah, from the Journey to the Force Awakens comics, the 4-part comic. Because you see Shara Bay, she helps Leia and Luke. She's Poe's mother, and you actually do see Poe's father working with Han Solo.
Yeah, and it makes sense, they would grow up together. So then that would give Kylo Ren personal fights with with those other Skywalker Solo kids. But
and the next is the
Solo
kids. So we have
the first one is Aya, and she's the one who named Aya.
Look, I was looking up names, and it was actually really funny because I was trying to find names because I was thinking to myself, I wanted to look up a name that means Falcon because I thought, wouldn't it be just like Han Solo if he had a daughter name her after the Millennium Falcon, essentially?
And then he snuck it by with this beautiful sounding name.
And so then I found Aya in Hebrew it means Falcon, and so I'm just that's it. Perfect.
So Aya Solo, she would essentially be sort of like a Jaina Solo.
Yeah, my idea was let's make her the Jaina Solo X because Jaina is also another really good character from the EU.
So he would have her as, and in fact in my rewrite, she and Chewbacca show up on Jakku trying to get the Millennium Falcon because when the Millennium Falcon got stolen, Han went off to still find Luke because I wanted to show that even though he cares about the Millennium Falcon, he's I've got to find Luke first to show that, his ties to his family, his brother-in-law
are much more important to him.
So then Aya and Chewie go to find the Millennium Falcon, and they find it on Jakku, and then they would be there, and they would sort of stumble onto...
And then, there's a fight at first, but then, Poe would see her, and they'd be like, Aya? Poe! What are you doing here?
And one thing I really love about her is that she would basically inherit a lot of the Han tendencies, the rush through with a gun, and she has blasters on her.
I was thinking it would be really cool as if she developed a lightsaber kind of a lot like Ezra's from Rebels, where it's a blaster / lightsaber, because then that would be the perfect fusion of both her Han Solo lineage, but also her Jedi lineage from her mother.
Right. So you see her as a Jedi, and this is the great thing is that she's the one who mentors Rey, and she senses that Rey's Force sensitive, but she doesn't know know that this is her cousin at first until the end of the movie.
Also, instead of that stupid scene where for no reason where Han Solo like is able to like shoot a stormtrooper without even looking, because I'm sorry, not even Solo in his prime can do that. And I was like, instead, have a scene where Aya's doing that, where she doesn't even have to look at people and shoot them because she's force sensitive. Come on, guys.
Yeah.
Like, wouldn't it be cool to see a force-sensitive person shooting with guns?
Yeah, and that's the great thing is that because her dad's Han Solo, she doesn't use a lightsaber.
Well, and Leia's her mother.
Yeah.
Like, they're both very blaster-friendly people.
So, you know, they use a mix of, she uses a mix of blasters and a lightsaber.
Ben Skywalker disapproves wholly of the principles of blasters because, like his namesake before him, so uncivilized.
And you know, so you would have Aya be there, and I actually would have her fight Kylo Ren, like during the equivalent of the Battle of Tokodana. You would have her fight Kylo Ren in the Force to try to, you know, stop him. So you would actually get a legitimate lightsaber fight.
Seriously, an actual real one.
Right, and then the second one would be Bail Solo.
Yes, the son of, obviously, the second child, and he obviously, like his namesake, is very into politics.
And he's always the one who's with Leia, who goes to...
He's a total mama's boy.
He goes to the Senate meetings, and he's always paying attention to the political climate.
Like, he's an absolute political nerd, and his siblings and cousins make fun of him for it because he is so hyper, like, politics. And they're like...
So basically...
And they're like, politics are boring. So he's like, no, they're interesting.
So which actually you could make some hilarious commentary on people's reactions to the
prequels, like people who actually liked the politics versus people who hated them, and so like you can have an audience meta as opposed to the stupid meta from The Last Jedi.
Well, and it's funny because he'd obviously look a lot like Han Solo, but he would be a political nerd. Again, he's also had Jedi training.
Yeah, force sensitive to protect himself.
And you know, he also is totally cool with aggressive negotiations.
Yeah, totally.
It's in his blood.
It is. It's a family thing, but at the same time, I love it. Like also, like yeah, he's a mama's boy, but he's also totally like he's really close with Aya, his older sister, and he admires her, and he just like. Anytime she says a plan, even if it's absolutely a ludicrous and stupid plan, he will reluctantly accept it, even if he thinks it's a bad idea, because he just loves his big sister so much. And even like their next child, which we would have Anakin Solo.
Yeah, so
even Anakin would be like, "That is the stupidest thing I ever heard." And he's just like, "Quiet, Aya knows what she's doing."
Yeah, and Anakin Solo would be very... Oh yeah, no, but with Bail, I actually, during the whole, the ending fight, like, essentially the equivalent of the Starkiller, which wouldn't be a super weapon, it would literally just be a mobile base, which would basically...
I had another idea, is where instead of it destroying, like, 5 planets, it's called Starkiller. What if instead it destroys stars?
Well, that might be something to do, like, later in the trilogy, but for mine, I would just have...
Like, if you're gonna call it Starkiller, make it a thing that kills stars, not it... Oh, it absorbs energy from stars. Oh, yeah, big whoop-de-frickin'-do.
Well, Starkiller base would have been... It was going to be a super weapon made by the Empire, but when the first... Death Star was destroyed, all of the resources that were going to that were moved to the second Death Star, which explains how they made it in just a few years.
Just like they have it like they're just sitting there as a base, kind of like how in The Last Jedi they had like, oh, it's an old abandoned rebel base that they were fleeing to.
Right.
So you could have it an old abandoned like
Empire. Yeah. So that's what Starkiller is, but it would still have the whole snowy planet like disguise. But I would actually have the finale, the big fight, is not between Rey and Kylo. Rey tries to fight Kylo, and then he's just like, whoosh. And because, of course, she has no training. But then Bail would come in and fight Kylo.
And because Bail's not as strong as his sister, but he'll put up a good fight, but he's obviously losing.
Well, but he's also shows his intelligence when he fights. That he'll use the snow. He'll steam the snow with his lightsaber and then like swarm like Kylo with it. He'll use the Force to throw tree branches. Yeah, he's practical. So even though he's not as strong, he makes up for that with his intelligence when he fights. So
whereas Aya,
what's funny?
She Leroy Jenkins at times, but she still has the smarts of Jaina Solo. Like she'll have parts. Like I wouldn't want her to be a carbon copy of Jaina Solo. Saying.
It's funny because my idea with her first fight with Kylo Ren is he's confronting Rey, and then Aya literally leaps and just like tackles him. Yeah, just tackles him, and that's when they start their fight. He's just like, and then Kylo's like, "I got you," smack, and then just runs into him, and then she just starts wailing on him. It's like, But yeah, so you get to see that.
Like that one picture of that guy just standing there, and then the guy with the snowball, just leaping.
Yeah, but
instead it's Aya, but with a lightsaber, just.
Yeah, so you actually get these fun Jedi characters through the movie. Then the other one would be.
And what I would do is also have a couple other Knights of Ren. So then that way, think about it, multiple lightsaber fights.
Yeah, and especially if I was doing Episode 8, I would have the Knights of Ren really come in Episode 8.
So then you would have the Skywalker children, the Solo children, just going all out, like multiples fights, and then you could have maybe even Mara Jade or Luke or even Leia.
Well, I had this wonderful idea of echoing the scene from the Geonosis when Mace Windu shows up, but have Mara Jade do that, where she comes.
Party's over.
Yeah, she comes in and puts her lightsaber up on one of the Knights of Ren, but of course it's the purple lightsaber, so it's very similar. It's just party's over.
Mace Windu just nods from the other side of the Force.
Yeah. Right on, mother.
Yeah, right on.
But so in the last of the biological Solo children is Anakin. And he would from what I've seen of his EU character, he's very similar. He struggles with the feeling like he's going to fall to the dark side because of his namesake. But does.
Then he meets Kylo Ren. He's like, you know what? I'm doing fine.
Yeah. Well, the whole thing is that he does come to terms with it and basically devotes himself to Jedi training and is very.
Well, also I had an idea that I forgot to tell you about. It was what if he was afraid to speak to the Force Ghost because he was always afraid to see his grandfather.
To see what he really was like. Yeah. That's a good idea.
Have him be afraid to confront the truth, and then have him come to terms with it. When he comes to his terms with his name, then say, I don't know, he decides to visit Dagobah because if it's more in tune with the Force or something like that, and then instead of having these brand new locations that are carbon copies of the originals, then just freaking throw the locations of the originals. If you're not gonna if you're gonna cheaply if you're gonna do new locations, make them be brand new, not carbon copies of something we've seen before. Have them instead planets of old. So have Anakin visit a place like that, or maybe have Anakin go to Tatooine, and he finds the old burnt down homestead of Uncle Luke's, and from there he's able to commune with his Force ghost of his grandfather because it has ties to him, or something, just something like that, just anything meaningful to his character, because I do like that about Anakin, and it still pisses me off how he was killed off.
But yeah, and then the last one was interesting. This character went through a lot of revisions as we were sort of discussing her character.
Well, because I did have an idea thinking, wouldn't it be cool if we had an Asian character? Hindsight.
Yeah.
But originally she was going to be Japanese.
Yeah, but
funnily enough, The Last Jedi influenced the biggest change in this one.
And that was I pointed out when I was checking things out. But she's a character who would have been adopted by Leia, and I came up with the idea that she was a survivor of a raid.
However, she's going to be older than Anakin. Anakin's the youngest child.
Yeah. She is. She's probably around the age of Aya.
Yeah, she's close, in between Bail and Aya. But Aya jokingly likes to treat her as as one of the youngest children, just because of she was adopted around the same time that Anakin was born.
Yeah. So when she was a kid, she'd be a Tui Solo.
Yeah, Tui
Solo. And she would, and I had this idea that she would be played by the actress who played Paige Tico in The Last Jedi.
Because she's an amazing Vietnamese actress. And so that's what made us change. Because her actress is so cool and so wasted.
Well, and it's funny.
I just thought, you know what? Whenever you were saying we should have a basic character in her, and I'm let's take the adopted daughter idea, and instead of making her a Japanese girl, let's make her the actress a Vietnamese girl based on this actress.
Right.
And let's cast in our version this actress will be the adopted daughter. And then I decided let's name her Thuy after Thuy Trang, the deceased actress who played the original Trini from Power Rangers.
So yeah, then she would have then when we figured that out, because I actually checked out Veronica Noah's character or actress, or Veronica Noah herself, and I'm mixing this up, but
we know,
and she's actually an action star, and she's
a famous one over there.
Yeah, she's done pretty well, and I'm thinking you take someone who's a pretty well-known action star.
And you don't make her a main character.
And you don't make her a main character. You don't give her any real action.
Like top billing.
Well, and
like if you're trying to appeal to the Asian market, why wouldn't you give a big name? Like she's like their Sigourney Weaver over there.
I mean, I don't know exactly how famous she is, but she's well known, and she's liked,
Well,
and she's beautiful too. So
she's amazing.
Yeah, and she's a competent fighter too. So. You could have really done a lot more with her character, so I thought,
I feel like Rose Tico would have been hated less
if she was played by.
This is no dissing to Kelly Marie Tran. It's just that
she's not a good fit.
She's not a good fit for that role, and I do like that girl, Kelly
Marie Tran.
Yeah, like she seems like a very sweet, kind person.
Yeah, but she got the short end of the stick.
And she was just terribly written.
I mean, if Veronica No was in that. Role. If they switch the actresses, then
granted, they would also have to rewrite the script too, a lot of her lines. But I still feel like she might have been hated less. But that's because Kelly is really good at comedic stuff, and she's constantly putting these more serious, deep action scenes. But then on the fly, it has to be funny. It was just jarring.
Yeah. Well, and you can also tell Veronica No's acting was so good that a lot of people remember Paige very fondly, even though she has 2 minutes of screen time.
Yeah.
And she doesn't really. I don't think she talks at all.
No, she just dies.
Yeah, she flies and then dies trying to blow up the dreadnought. So, but a lot of people remember that because of the acting. You should have gotten that actress and made her a main character, and that's why I felt there was such an injustice. I wanted to come up with a character base.
So we decided to transform our character just to fit this one actress.
And I actually think this ended up working out very well in terms of the character.
Yeah, we ended up accidentally shipping her with Finn, too. Ironically enough.
Well, what's really funny, though, is that when because after we figured that out, I decided, wait a minute, we need to come up with a backstory for her. So I said, okay, she would have been the survivor of a raid on a essentially like a colony that was taking kids for the First Order Stormtroopers.
They were kidnapping, and this would make her a perfect foil to Finn, because Finn was one of those children that was kidnapped from his family and brainwashed.
And she was, she escaped that, but lost her entire family, and then was discovered by Leia.
And they could connect each other through that.
Right, so you actually have these...
So then this would be a legitimate romance between...
Yeah, you actually have something to base on that, and...
As opposed to what the frick that was in The Last Jedi.
Saving what we love, boom! But, so yeah, and it's really funny because I didn't even think about that at first when I was coming up with it. I was just trying to come up with an interesting backstory, and then you pointed it out.
Well, I said, "Oh, that'd make her a good foil." And you're like, "Oh, it's yeah." And then you were thinking of interactions, and I was like, "Crap, I ship it." And you're like, "Me too."
And I was like, "Wow!" It's just, it's like, yeah, you see that. That's it. If you actually give these characters a decent backstory and decent character, then this sort of stuff comes. These interactions come naturally. And it's like, and then I had this hilarious idea of a quirk where she's the character who has 20 blasters on her at any point, and when they have to disarm, it's
she's totally Han Solo's baby.
Yeah. And since she's the only one who's not force sensitive, he's just like mine. Yeah. She's the only one who understands me.
All the kids are force sensitive, and Han Solo would be like, "My child."
She's the only one who understands the pain. But he teaches her how to fight with a blaster, and then of course. So she's always prepared, and she uses blasters, she has more, and it's like that one scene in The Matrix where they're pulling out guns, where she's like that all the time.
Like any of those tropes where they say
like Razor and Green Lantern.
Yeah, there's always that trope where they tell people to remove any weapons, and it's just unlimited weapons keep pulling out, and they're all just like anything else, and then just suddenly somehow out of nowhere some hammer space an even bigger weapon.
Yeah, so yeah, that would have been her character, and I probably would have brought her in for episode 8, where she
you would give hints to the other children.
Right.
The first movie would just basically show just simply maybe a quick scene of Ben Skywalker with his mother, and then and maybe have Biggs hanging out with Bail and Anakin just briefly.
Yeah.
But mostly you would mostly see Bail and Aya.
Yeah.
And Thuy would be mentioned. She'd be out doing her own thing.
Yeah.
Maybe Bail would ask, what's Thuy doing? And she's just she Mom sent her on a mission. She's out over and I don't know. She's going to Naboo for blah blah blah, receiving X.
Right, and you have these mentions, especially for stuff of prequel planets, and it's this stuff really kind of ties it together. I even had this idea of early on there would be a very short scene where Leia sort of you see her chatting with the current queen of Naboo. Very quick, it would be 20 seconds of just seeing her, but then that would be, okay, we're acknowledging the expanded universe even though we're not going to just go to Naboo. But you understand that. And you can understand that things are still around.
Also, the Republic would be reformed back on Coruscant.
Yeah, that would make the most sense, and it'd be on Coruscant. And then you'd have the Jedi Temple would have been reused, but cleaned up.
And it's all cleaned up, and also, here's another big thing. Ahsoka would be running the Jedi Temple while Luke is away, because Ahsoka comes back.
Yeah, and I always wanted this idea, like, Luke's Jedi Order, it wasn't just...
Luke meets Ahsoka, and I was thinking of, instead of, what's-her-face, who they got to play Maz Kanata, you know that famous African actress?
I can't pronounce her name.
It's like...
Le Nyong. I know I'm butchering this, but you know who we're talking about.
Yeah, her. She's like gorgeous woman. I was thinking, because people suggested, what if she was casted as Ahsoka?
I would actually be totally cool with that.
Like, I think, because she's a really good actress.
Yeah, she's a good actress, and she's wasted as Maz.
And she's actually got a really funny sense of humor when she is Maz. Like,
Yeah.
she like says a couple funny lines, minus that stupid boyfriend line.
Yeah.
And I was like, but I think she would make great for like an elderly Ahsoka.
Yes.
Like, and so, like, have an elderly Ahsoka, like, she's just running the temple while Luke is away. And it would make sense, like if people were saying, well, but she cut her hands off from the Jedi. And I'm like, okay, yeah, she did. But
that was the old Jedi Order.
And that was
Luke's Jedi Order acknowledges.
Different. Plus, this is Anakin's child.
It's Sky Guy Jr.
Like, you're telling me she wouldn't come back out. I'm like, I want Ahsoka to meet Luke and Leia. Like, that was one of the one things since Ahsoka is confirmed to be alive. Like, that I was hoping that the EU would have, like, until before The Force Awakens, that Ahsoka would meet him. But now I'm like, well, great, since Luke's entire Jedi Order is destroyed, now that means I can never hope that Ahsoka met with Luke, ever.
Yeah.
Which ruins everything.
Yeah, but I wanted to fix that, and I would even have a reference to characters like
Kanan and Ezra.
Kanan and Ezra would be part of his order.
Like they're part of Luke's council.
Yeah, Kyle Katarn. You have all these characters.
Yeah, Kyle Katarn has to be there because
he's
awesome.
And I would also have him mentor Finn when he discovers he's Force sensitive. Eventually through the trilogy, because he's like, I've been there, bro. I know what it's like.
Me too.
But then you'd have all of Luke's students, and the way I would write it is
that's a fun way to give nods to the EU.
Yeah.
And
without bending over.
To the prequels, but not bending over backwards and creating your own new ideas. Because of why can't you have a hodgepodge of all these things? Rogue One did it. It had a hodgepodge of references to the TV shows, a couple of things like very granted minor to the EU, to the prequels, to even the sequels, to the original trilogy, and its own thing. Like. You can make a movie that's heavy on fan service while telling its own story, and you don't rely on just like, oh, see guys, we did practical effects, aren't we great? Except for your very conspicuous CGI hentai tentacle thing.
Yeah, but the way I would write it with the story was the attack on Luke's Jedi Temple is an event that's shrouded in mystery until the end of The Force Awakens when Rey meets Luke and actually has a scene where she talks to him.
Oh, but the big reason why Luke is actually missing.
Yes. It was originally because he realized that, when Thrawn was coming after him, he wanted to make sure he separated himself so that he wasn't a target, but he was also going to make sure that he wasn't going to waste his time, so he was going behind the scenes and he was trying to figure out ways to fight the First Order, but in doing so with the ways that would only draw attention to himself. And of course,
but he always kept in contact with his family,
yes.
And he would still meet up with Mara Jade covertly to not paint a target on her back either.
Right, and he did eventually. The idea of there being a map.
Eventually, Mara Jade's like, screw it, I'm going with you.
Yeah, she wouldn't let him do it alone. But also, Luke had actually hidden his students.
Oh, also, who we would cast as elderly Mara Jade?
Sigourney Weaver.
Because why not?
Well, and it's funny, I also figured that Bryce Dallas Howard is a young Mara Jade.
Yes.
And it's so funny because they look very similar, especially a lot of little details in their face. I thought that would be a great casting. But Luke would have hidden his students. Now, in the attack, some of them did die, but he managed to protect them and escape, and he hid them in the first Jedi Temple that, what was that temple place called?
It's that one ancient temple in Octu.
Octu, yeah. It says, but he hid all of his students there because it's some place that's strong in the Force. And
it's so ancient that no one even knows that it exists anymore.
Right.
Like, it's not on any modern star map.
It's something that he had
The
discovered.
only way Luke found it was by finding ancient old maps. And then that would be the map that BB-8 would have.
Right, and
it wouldn't be like some incomplete map, it would be the full map.
Well,
but the reason everybody plugged into their databanks is because they didn't know how to cross-reference it.
Was
but
such
then
an ancient...
R2 was gone. R2's not going to be in sleep mode. He was like with Mara Jade or something. R2 shows up at the end of the movie and beats BB-8, but R2 had ways to cross-reference it because all that data Luke put in R2.
Yeah.
R2 comes and cross-references it and helps people be able to read this ancient map, so that way they could find out this temple where Luke left behind.
And it's only something that you would basically already have to know about it in order to understand things, in order how to translate that map, which is something that he had taught his kids. And he had taught Leia.
Also, C-3PO would be running around with Aya, because I'm sorry, to leave R2 and C-3PO out of most of the action, and The Force Awakens was really dumb, especially, I know BB-8 is supposed to be your new R2-D2, but seriously...
Leaving out C-3PO doesn't make sense. So yeah, but at the end of the movie when Rey, Leia, and Han, because of course Han survives, they end up going to Ahch-To to meet Luke, and of course it's a big reunion of the trio.
Yeah, Luke was actually, he returns to Ahch-To just to make sure all the students that were there were okay.
Yeah, he had sensed that Rey and Han and then Leia were arriving, so he went there.
Your change for why Rey doesn't have any memories.
Oh yeah. So basically, during the attack on the Jedi Temple, Rey was taken, and she was taken by the First Order, and Thrawn was going to use her as a Knight of Ren. He eventually wanted to make her the leader because she was the daughter of Luke Skywalker.
So she was very powerful.
Yeah, so he brainwashed her, so she had no memories.
So she had part of the brainwashing happen. That's why she doesn't have memories.
But a First Order officer felt sympathy because he realized they're kidnapping this child, and he realized this was the character who realized that he didn't quite sign up for this, so he decided to help her and escape. And unfortunately, they ended up crashing on Jakku, and he dies. So Rey is left alone with no memories on this strange planet, and then that's how she ended up on Jakku. So she essentially had to do everything she could to survive. She did have skills like with mechanics and stuff.
And that's why she never left the place. Not because if she thought that some family was going to come looking for her, but this is because of this place is all she's ever known her whole life.
Yeah, and it's scary to leave. And
because she doesn't know what's out there.
Yeah.
This is her whole world.
Right. So, and this is all stuff that would really come into light by the end of the movie. Again, giving some things where you have her meet Luke. She meets Mara. She meets some of the other Jedi students there, and she sees
and she meets her brothers.
Yeah, and so she finally realizes that this is her family. When Luke would pull the
and the whole time she's been hanging out with her two of her cousins, and she didn't even know it.
Yeah, and I would also have the hilarious. I just couldn't resist having Luke say, "I am your father" to her at the end. Because what a hilarious echo, because of the completely different circumstances of the...
Anakin off-screen, high-fiving Luke, just be like, eh.
Yeah, and then that would end with Luke saying, "I'll train you, Rey, in the ways of the Jedi," and then that ends so you can have a time skip for things in the next movie.
And then so that's why then have her more powerful in the next movie because she's been training.
Right.
And this is all just, granted, we did hint at a couple things that we would do future rewrites of future movies, but still.
Right, yeah.
But this is all rough draft stuff.
Yeah, and even this isn't even going into all the details. I would have Phasma, appear more within the story and
not
give her
wasted,
more
and Hux would get more stuff to do.
Yeah, and Hux would actually have a personality. I actually did have this idea that he was since he's the son of a famous First Order scientist, that he ended up getting the position of a general. But he hated his father because he hates his father in canon, but he hates his father and by extension the First Order. That he decided to use his position to help against to help with the New Republic alliance. And so he's deciding to just sort of slip some information in to help them out on occasion because he's just like.
In my very quick rewrite, the reason I was going to make it not even as good as your rewrite. When this was the good overhaul. Mine was just a way to at least make it a decent movie. A very quick, I thought about it in 10 minutes. One of my things with Hux was I was going to make it that he really admired Tarkin, and that's what makes him why he's such an obvious, blatant Tarkin ripoff. But it's he admired Tarkin, and he studied all Tarkin's tactics of how Tarkin got things done, of how Tarkin dealt with a lot of military applications, and so then that's why some of his scenes. But he's unhinged and crazy because of he's kind of like in Kylo Ren, he wants to desperately, he's obsessive to the point that he wants to be like this one person. And so he like thinks of rather gruesome methods, kind of like Tarkin, like, oh, we're just gonna blow up an innocent planet. And I was like, but he also tries to be sophisticated like Tarkin. Like, but that was just a very simple, like, quick explanation for why he's a very lazy ripoff of Tarkin. Not like, and like, again, we have better ideas when we actually stop and really think about it. But yeah, that's how we would rewrite things. And as you can see, we really despise The Force Awakens as opposed to how we used to think.
Right, and we put a lot of thought into rewriting this, and it's fun to rewrite this because this story that we've come up with.
And these are characters we do think have a lot of good ideas behind them. They just were executed poorly, or they were inconsistent, or a lot of convenience.
Yeah. And you know that's why we keep characters. We keep a lot of these characters.
Awakens is what they should name the movie.
Yeah, I mean it's it's why we keep a lot of these characters. It's like there are a lot of interesting ideas, but they're poor. It's like I mentioned this in one of my videos that I did this month. When it's like you have J.J. Abrams writing a character like Finn, and he's just like, and he's just looking at this, and he's like the backstory, and he's like, I don't want to write this, and he just throws it out.
Well, like that's the most interesting part.
Yeah, it's like that backstory. It's like I want to see Finn come to terms with his brainwashing, come to terms with everything he knew was wrong, and that he has to change how he's thinking simply because he knows that he can't. Luke Skywalker isn't evil. Han Solo isn't evil. Everything he learned was wrong, and he's having to have this mental breakdown to come to terms with this. It's like that would have been far more interesting than what we got. And it's like he's not a coward. He's a hyper competent soldier, but he has literally no other skills. He should have been the most awkward character in the movie. Because he has no social skills. Mm-hmm. He's just a soldier.
But no, instead he's the yuck funny guy. And a coward. Great. Fantastic.
Yeah. So yeah, I think we've talked long enough about The Force Awakens.
Well, I guess that will close out your Star Wars month.
Yes, that closes out Star Wars month. I think that's a strong note to end on.
Take it away.
Yeah. So, if you want to submit a topic to me, you can comment below if you're on YouTube or if you're on Tumblr. You can send me an ask and do topic, then whatever topic you want me to talk about. Just make sure to follow the rules that I'll be posting down below. If you want to watch last week's topic video, you can check that out here. If you want to watch next week's topic video, you can check that out here when I get that done. So if there's anything you want to talk about with The Force Awakens or what you think about rewrites, please comment below. And thank you for watching.